I was wrong to raise you as a human. I should have prepared you better. You're a Viltrumite in blood only. Well, your true education begins now.
Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my Invincible Episode 8 finale video. There were so many WTF moments. The entire episode was basically a WTF moment, just the way they were building up to the big reveal. So we'll break it all down. There was a whole bunch of Easter eggs, and they actually just renewed the show for Season 2 and Season 3. So there'll be at least 2 more seasons, probably more than that too, because it's actually really solid. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. Obviously, spoiler warning for the episode if you have not seen it yet. But I'll just number these as we go along and talk about WTF moments and Easter eggs. Starting with the title of the episode, Where I Really Come From, all about Mark learning the truth about where Omni-Man, his father, Nolan Grayson, really comes from. The series just in general, as you could all probably tell, is meant to be a parody of the Superman mythology, and the Viltrumites are kind of like their versions of Kryptonians, but with a really dark twist on it. So because this is an Amazon TV show and it's a very dark twist on DC Comics, also we have to talk about The Boys TV show as well, because that's also a big twist on the Justice League and Marvel Comics. The Boys, obviously fantastic show. We're going to be seeing Season 3. I'll be doing videos for that as well. But whereas The Boys is more of a parody of the tropes of traditional superhero comics, like the tropes of the Justice League stories and the DC characters, they have a very different explainer for where superheroes really come from in The Boys universe. The difference with Invincible is it is actually much closer to the real mythology of Superman's origin story in the comics and the other Kryptonians in DC Comics history. So it's like, what if you were Superboy and Superman was your father, but also, what if Superman and the Kryptonians were the villains of the story? And the reason why they have Mark witness his father killing the Immortal is so that he kind of recognizes what's going on. Like, he thinks that he's been taken over by some alien parasite. Come to your senses, give me back my father. But then he explains to them, no, I'm doing this of my own free will. The funny thing about the Immortal too, I mean, he seemingly kills him, but as his name implies, he is immortal. You could spend a whole 30-minute video just explaining his character's backstory, but basically the idea is that you reassemble his body correctly, eventually he'll heal and he'll come back to life, as he did previously in the series. They also follow that up at the end of the episode too, with Cecil bringing him back again. But then Omni-Man starts telling Mark the dark truth about why he came to Earth, what his secret mission is, that he wasn't previously willing to tell his mother right away. Like he said, we'll talk later, then flies right through the roof of the house. But she's listening to this entire fight, this entire speech the whole time, his monologue, so she learns everything, including the real WTF twist that Omni-Man kind of thinks of her as a pet. I'm gonna live forever, so you have to imagine how that affects the way he perceives relationships. Like, all these people on Earth, why do you care about them so much? They'll be dead in the blink of an eye compared to our lifespan. But effectively, the first half of the episode is basically him punching Mark into submission. You can't even call it a fight. It's more like a massacre that just slowly plays out across the planet. Him just throwing Mark around, dragging him around, punching him through the planet to different cities, trying to force him to submit, while destroying as much property as possible. Like, you say that there was a lot of property destruction during the DC movies like Man of Steel, during the Justice League movie. There were a couple darker, funny moments too, like you kind of feel bad laughing, but it is kind of ridiculous. When he punches him down to the bottom of the ocean and then drags him back up, he goes back through the other side of the cruise liner instead of just going around it. Like, he could have gone in any direction, flown in any direction, but he decides to go back up through the cruise liner just because he wants to cause more damage. But while this montage of punching and violence is happening, he kind of glosses over some of the details of his backstory. So Mark's father, Nolan Grayson, is really the son of the former emperor of the Viltrumite people. So Mark actually comes from a royal bloodline. Technically, he is a Viltrumite prince. It doesn't give him any special extra powers or anything like that, but it does give him a level of immunity against some special viruses that are meant to target the Viltrumite people specifically. But what happened a long time ago in their people's history is that Nolan's father, the Viltrumite emperor, was assassinated by someone close to him who usurped the throne. Then Thrag, one of their most powerful Viltrumites to ever live, got revenge, killed the usurper. He took control of their military, there was a huge civil war, and then he used that to reform their people's culture and their ways. So when he gets to the part of his speech where he talks about his race culling the weak out so that only the strongest remained, and it basically cut their population in half, that's what he's referring to. After Thrag took control, he instituted this policy where you see them all training against each other to become the strongest. So if it wasn't clear, even though it feels like Omni-Man is unkillable, there are Viltrumites that are even more powerful than him, which is the Thrag character. So you have to imagine that it's a lot like Superman fighting other Kryptonians. Like, there would be other Kryptonians who could potentially be stronger than Superman given enough time. So more Superman references. Eventually, the Viltrumite people became more imperialistic, going around conquering the rest of the universe, as he says during his speech. And what they did is they would assign different Viltrumites to different planets, having them integrate with people living there, but secretly preparing the planet for a full-blown Viltrumite invasion. The very practical reason why he says they do things this way, playing the long game instead of just rolling up to a planet and trying to take it over on the spot, is because eventually they'd conquered so many planets around the universe, they actually started to run into a manpower problem where they didn't have enough Viltrumites to go to other new planets and conquer new places. Also, they had problems with rebellions and uprisings. Alan the Alien, played by Seth Rogen, kind of explains that towards the end of the episode when he's talking to Mark about the history of his home planet. He said the reason why his home planet was destroyed was because his people rebelled against the Viltrumites, so rather than take the trouble of reconquering them and using all these resources, they just decided to cut their losses and blew the planet up. So the reason why Mark exists is because of that new program of them interbreeding and creating more Viltrumites that way. That's what Omni-Man's whole villain monologue here is about. He's trying to get Mark to turn to the dark side, join me, and we can rule the universe together. Very Star Wars, very apropos, because Mark Hamill has a cameo scene as the art character, the person who makes all the supersuits. One of the darker WTF moments during their fight is when Omni-Man basically tells him that you don't matter, it'll only take another 17 years to replace you, implying that he could just fly off and have another child with another human woman, because obviously he's not going to go back to his mother. But while this is happening, he also clarifies some of their powers, their race's abilities. So as they get older, their aging process slows even more, meaning that theoretically, a pure Viltrumite could live indefinitely, one with pure blood. Even Mark, who's half Viltrumite, he says, will live for thousands of years, bare minimum. So this whole mission about him weakening the planet for invasion is why he killed the Guardians at the end of episode 1. They were basically like the Invincible series version of the Justice League. Remember how Cecil kept referencing that he tried to get Omni-Man on several occasions over the years to join the Guardians, but he kept refusing, and Omni-Man kind of played it off like, I don't need them, I don't need any help. He kind of tried to instill that belief in Mark, like, don't go joining any teams, but Mark wound up trying to join the teen team anyway, or at least work with them. It's all because Omni-Man always knew that eventually the Guardians would be the first group that Cecil would send after him, Earth's last line of defense. So he was systematically trying to cripple Earth's defenses to take out every possible weapon they could use against him. And I feel like Steven Yeun's performance as Invincible as Mark was actually great in the episode. You totally buy that he wouldn't care about the Viltrumites at all. Like, I don't care about some race of people that I've never met before. These are all my friends that you're trying to kill. So even though he valiantly tries to fight him, it's hilarious how quickly Omni-Man shuts him down. That's just to give you an idea of how much more powerful Omni-Man is, how unkillable he really is. It's all meant to be very tragic the way this plays out. I felt like they did a great job of selling that during the episode. Like, I had to sit down for a minute after I watched this, think about my life, think about my choices. And one of the other best moments of the episode is the moment that gives him pause when he has the flashback. Just as he's about to finish punching Mark's face in, he flashes back to the baseball game when he was a child and the importance of his wife's speech. Like, see, his happiness becomes your happiness. Aren't you happy now watching him? And that sort of reveals that he actually does care about Mark. He does care about his wife, even though he says that he doesn't at many times during the episode, like he calls his wife a pet. She's more like a pet to me. Him sort of having that moment where he realizes he actually does care about Mark is the only thing that saved his life. The only reason he didn't get smashed into a ball of goo, and the only reason why Omni-Man didn't burn the entire planet to the ground. It's just that he isn't willing to stray from his mission, so to speak. I'll explain the ending of the episode too and what happens to him next, because Omni-Man basically just takes off into outer space and you don't see him again, but there's a lot of theories that they have about where he went. The thing about Omni-Man too is they try to make him a little more sympathetic, like he's not your straight up mustache twirling villain, even though J.K. Simmons is fantastic as Omni-Man and he does have a mustache that he could twirl. He tries to sell it like, oh, we're bringing them into the Empire, this is a good thing, we're going to give them all this technology, all these medical advancements, we're going to stop all war, but all the humans will basically become their pets, so to speak. So you'd have to imagine his personality is kind of like, what if Superman were to grow up on Krypton, being instilled purely with Kryptonian values, and then he came to Earth? How different would his personality be? He'd probably be more like the Eradicator. So this is basically Superboy almost being killed by his father, Superman. Like, it wasn't about him trying to win the fight, it's more about Omni-Man coming to the realization that he did care about him. Even though there are many times during the series, too, that they make them seem like they're unkillable, Viltrumites do have weaknesses that they try to develop. There are ways that they try to fight them in the future of the series that we'll probably find out about in Season 2, Season 3, and there are ways of slowing them down, but that's mostly what it is. All these countermeasures are mostly there to just slow them down, not actually kill them. But just to explain what happened to Omni-Man when he flew off the planet, he basically took off into orbit, abandoning his mission to conquer Earth that was given to him by Thrag, sort of like the military leader of all Viltrumites. Normally they would punish Omni-Man severely for abandoning his post, so to lessen his sentence, what he does is he immediately decides to go take over a different planet. He basically goes for the easy layup, so maybe we'll see a teaser for that in Season 2 or Season 3 at some point. Omni-Man is still part of the story, but basically he leaves the main story for a little while, because the main story is all about Mark's life as Invincible. If you have read the comics, please don't post spoilers for what happens to Omni-Man way later on, but he does come back in a big way eventually. Then after the montage of destruction and violence, Cecil and his mother arrive to take Mark to their special hospital, and after he recovers, it's still only like halfway through the episode. Basically, the aftermath is just as huge, the big reveals, and a lot of the second half of the episode is really just table setting for Season 2 and Season 3, just teasing all the big stuff that Mark is going to deal with. So probably one of the next big WTF reveals is when Cecil takes him into their special lab and reveals that special frequency of light that most humans aren't capable of seeing because they've been lacing the water this whole time. I'm sure conspiracy theorists will love that. But it's also about what they're doing inside the lab. You like pan around, you see all these different scenes of them testing weapons, testing armor, and you see them bringing the Immortal back to life. He also has that big speech with Alan the alien at the end where he asks him, what are you gonna do next? And they have that huge montage of all the different storylines and characters that I'll explain in a second, all big teasers for Season 2, but he says basically, finish high school, I guess. He'll continue to try and not fail out of high school for lack of attendance while rushing off every 5 seconds to deal with more earth-shattering catastrophes and supervillains. So if you haven't read the comic book series, it's all out there. Like, the comic book series ended a while ago, so you can actually read the entire story, even though the TV show story is actually a little bit different. Robert Kirkman also revealed the reason why he's changing the comic book story a little is because he just believes that he's a better writer now. He wrote the comic book story when he was in his 20s. He's like, I just wasn't as good of a writer back then. But then Amber comes back around on him, so she'll be back in Season 2. They kind of imply that they're getting back together as a couple. He's also got this long-running romance with Atom Eve in the comics, and without giving away big spoilers, they kind of tease their chemistry during Season 1, but I'm assuming that they won't get together till like the end of Season 2, maybe Season 3. Robert Kirkman explained that he's got about 7 seasons worth of material just adapting the comics, so I think they'll eventually get to everything. It's just a question of how much they'll speed run the comic book story and what they'll cut out. But they do go back to Mark Hamill's character, have a tag scene with Art, I think just because they have Mark Hamill, like, oh man, we need to use him in this episode at least once. Mark eventually does get a couple Invincible costume changes, and they do get into some multiverse tropes, so you see many different versions of Invincible costumes, so hopefully they'll bring Mark Hamill back in future seasons. Then that whole speech that Alan the alien goes out on about them fighting the Viltrumites is kind of like them taking their Babe Ruth shot, calling their Avengers Endgame. So he talks about the coalition of planets trying to assemble an army to defeat the Viltrumites, and that's meant to be their endgame, their Avengers Endgame moment that they're building up to. Like in the first Avengers movie, Thanos shows up in the post-credit scene to let you know that he is the endgame of this story arc, the Infinity Saga. This whole final battle for independence from the Viltrumites that they're teasing on Invincible, that's like the show's version of Endgame. But the way Alan explains it, no one up to this point has ever been powerful enough to fight the Viltrumites. They're literally unkillable for the most part. I mean, one Viltrumite could kill another Viltrumite, but for the most part, if you're not a Viltrumite, you have zero chance against them. Which is why Invincible is kind of like their new Luke Skywalker, just to make another Mark Hamill reference. I guess in this scenario, Thrag would be kind of like the show's version of Emperor Palpatine. We might meet him during Season 2, maybe not till Season 3. They might wait a while on that. But here are all the scenes that they tease for Season 2 in that ending montage. So they re-arrest the Maulers, lock them up. This guy with the cast on his arm was the same guard that they wrecked when they were escaping. These are the Flaxans plotting to attack Earth again. They were the aliens using the time dilation devices from another dimension. Omni-Man had basically traveled to their homeworld and obliterated it in the span of a couple weeks. It was actually a really badass scene. Then you see Doc Seismic again from Episode 3 controlling a bunch of magma golems preparing to attack again. you see those parasites that took over Mars spreading and getting even worse. They show you Titan again, who took over as the boss of the city after they got rid of his old boss. Then right on cue, you see Battle Beast, also from the same episode, who almost wound up killing Invincible. And probably one of the bigger teasers here is Cecil inspecting the newest upgraded Reanimin drones. They're kind of like the show's version of Terminators. They just keep iterating, making them more and more powerful as a last resort against the Viltrumites when they eventually do show up. And if you didn't know, the song that's playing over this montage is called I Hate to Tell You I Told You So by The Hives. Very apropos, because it's also meant to be a reference to the plot of the episode and what's in store for Mark next for Invincible. So everyone just post your favorite WTF moment from the episode in the comments below, or from the series in general. I'll do more videos for season 2 when they start releasing more footage, but it's only going to get crazier, things will only escalate, and if you do want to, you can go read the comics right now. My next video will be for that Falcon and Winter Soldier bonus episode. They have a special episode that they're releasing with a whole bunch of extra footage, behind the scenes stuff. It's just like the same episode that they did for WandaVision after the finale. So that video should be up by tonight. Make sure you have alerts enabled for my channel so you don't miss anything. Everyone click here for my full Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 6 finale video, and click here for that brand new Captain America 4 movie announcement. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys tonight.